So all of us want happiness and not suffering. And although we live in a very rich country, and by and large, compared to other people in this world, I think it's easier for us to get what we want. We also have more freedom here. And yet, as much as we get what we want, not only in terms of possessions, but also in terms of jobs and careers and education and things like that, we continually remain dissatisfied. So we work very hard to get what we want. And even when we get it, it just doesn't cut it. You know, we need more, we need better. There's some interference with our happiness. Somebody else has more than we do or better than we do. We're somehow deficient in some way. So this too is part of being in samsara. It's not a case of the outside circumstances being insufficient. You know, it's predominantly not that, but it's more a case of the way attachment and craving function in our own mind. And as long as we have attachment and craving, whatever we have, whatever we achieve, will somehow just not be good enough. And that dissatisfaction that we experience interferes with our appreciation of what we do have. Because our mind goes automatically to what we lack, what we wish we have, but we don't, instead of looking at what we do have and rejoicing. So the real solution is to change the mind here. We can change the external circumstances, but we'll still be dissatisfied until we change the mind. And the way to change the mind is to constantly remind ourselves that what we have is, and what we are, and what we do is good enough. And constantly turn the mind to a happy state of appreciation and gratitude and rejoicing, instead of letting it dwell in dissatisfaction. So saying that dissatisfaction is something common to all living beings in samsara, except those who are too spaced out in concentrated states to realize it. And let's have the intention to free ourselves from samsara, and seeing that dissatisfaction is the situation of all living beings who are no different than us, who have constantly been kind to us. Then let's aim for full awakening so we can lead them to a state of satisfaction and peace. And so let's let that be our motivation for being together today. You know what's very interesting about dissatisfaction is that it's very related to what the people around us have or are or do. Okay? And they've done studies on this. So if you live, let's say, in a poorer area, and everybody around you is that same economic status, then as long as everybody's kind of equal, you don't feel jealous or dissatisfied. But when you can see somebody who has more than you do or better than you do, then the mind becomes jealous and dissatisfied. So I'm just using material things here because it's easy to see, but in a community of, where the economic standard is lower and a community where the economic standard is higher, what they are dissatisfied about will be different. Because at the higher income people will be dissatisfied about not having, the BMW that is comparable to their neighbor's BMW. But if their BMW, which is inferior to their neighbor's, if you put that in a simpler, a lower income area, the people would be totally delighted. Yeah. And they would consider themselves quite wealthy, and other people would get jealous of them. So it's quite interesting, isn't it, that it's not the object that is so important. It's how we compare to the people around us. Mm-hmm. And so this happens not only in material things, but in education. Yeah, if we're with people, similar kind of education, we're all equal, fine. Yeah, but people will be dissatisfied because they don't have better education. They're still, if somebody else in their group has a better education, then they really get dissatisfied. Okay? And it happens in terms of relationships, in terms of social status, in terms of all sorts of things. Yeah. So what you have, do, or are in one situation may not make you terribly dissatisfied as much as even if you have more in another situation where you'll become more dissatisfied. Are you getting what I'm saying? Yeah. So it's quite interesting, this mind that's always comparing ourselves to what other people have, do, or are. They're better than me. Yeah, they get to sit in front of me. They get more attention than me. They're richer than me. Yeah. They have a nicer smile than me. They're more athletic than I am. Yeah. Their voice and chanting is nicer than my voice. Again and again, this mind comparing and how much suffering it brings us from being dissatisfied. Yeah. And, this is why I think Lama's whole thing, when he kept saying, good enough, dear, he called everybody dear, And it didn't have anything romantic to it. It's just everybody was dear. So good enough, dear. And he kept saying it again and again to his Western students, because his Western students were the most dissatisfied. Yeah. And I think part of that has to do with the media that we have here and the advertising industry, which are designed to make us feel not good enough and that we need something that we don't have. We need to look different than we do look. Yeah. So constant dissatisfaction. And that's good for the economy. And it's bad for human happiness. But we fall for it. And I think it really takes a lot of effort to notice, where we get sucked into this. Not, for some people's possessions, for some people, it's, other, relationships, it's career, it's, your education, it's your social status, it's your looks, it's your athletic ability, your music ability, your artistic ability. Yeah. Whatever it is, how this mind is always comparing itself and coming out dissatisfied and discontent. Yeah. So it's not an issue of external, I've got to change samsara. I need to tweak my samsara to make it better. Because however we tweak our samsara and we get a little bit of what we want, then after a while it too is just not going to be good enough. And there's going to be somebody that's better. Yeah. So the real way is I think, continuously. First thing, good enough, good enough, good enough. And second thing, looking at what we do have, and instead of comparing with ourselves up, compare ourselves with other people who, due to certain circumstances in their life, don't have the opportunities that we do have. And say, wow, how fortunate I am. Yeah, look at what I have. Look at what I can do. Look at all these things. And appreciate that. And not feel guilty about it, but say, I have this fortune. I need to use it to benefit others. I don't want to use it to become arrogant and hold that over others. I want to use it so I can be of benefit. And in that way, whatever level of whatever we have, do, or are, there's peace in the heart. And we use it to contribute to the welfare of society. And then our life becomes very worthwhile. Whereas these people who are always competing and comparing, the life is never peaceful, and the motivation is always self-centered. I want more. I need more recognition. I need more love. I need more appreciation. I need more talent. Yeah. I need another pair of gardening gloves. Yeah. We laugh, but it's true. Look at those people. Their gardening gloves, so nice. They have this special kind of fabric, but it's really expensive, and I can't afford my gardening gloves. Just look at them, All my friends, and when I go to my gardening class, they look at me and say, look what a slob I am. I have these really horrible gloves. You know, how we can spend so much time worrying about our gardening gloves and what other people think about us. Yeah? And meanwhile, there's so much beauty around us that we don't see at all. We're totally blind to. So, when they say that the great yogis see this world as a pure land, I don't know that it's that everything all of a sudden starts sparkling to their eye consciousness, or their mental consciousness, and all of a sudden everything's made of sparkles. As much as it is appreciation, a mind of appreciation and contentment, that brings a sense of fulfillment. And wouldn't that be a nice, pure land to live in, where your mind is pure, so that even if you eat PB&J every day for lunch, you're okay. I think I got through college mostly on PB&J. You may not know, it's peanut butter and jelly. Okay. Oh, okay. Okay. Oh, so we're going to get to the 10 advantages, but first, I think it's important to discern the 3 levels of precepts that we can have. So the first is pratimoksha, which is sometimes translated as individual liberation, but I like using just pratimoksha. And the second is our Bodhisattva precepts, and the third are Tantric precepts. Is it too much or too? Oh, okay. Yeah, can people hear, or do you want it a little bit loud? Okay, a little louder back there. If you turn it soft everywhere, then I'm going to talk very loud and stress my voice out. Okay, so those 3 levels, pratimoksha, bodhisattva, and tantric, yeah, and they're progressive. When you take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, you also have the opportunity to take one or more, well, okay, let's go back before I do that. The pratimoksha, okay, these include the lay precepts and the monastic precepts. Okay, so there's 8 types of pratimoksha precepts. So the first one is the one-day precepts. There are 8 precepts that you take for one day. This is similar to the Mahayana, the 8 Mahayana precepts that we'll do on Saturday. But it's different because the motivation is different, and there's a few small technicalities that are different in the precepts, but it's mostly because of the motivation. Okay. So because in the pratimoksha precepts, your baseline motivation must be a wish to be free of cyclic existence. So that's not a Mahayana motivation, which is bodhicitta. So when you take the 8 anagarika precepts, what you're doing is taking those 8 one-day precepts for a longer period of time. So here we usually do it for a year. So, prior to people taking the novice ordination. But it's just the one-day precepts taken for a long period of time. Okay, then the next, so that's the initial pratimoksha. The next higher, you could say, is taking the 5 precepts for life. So this is upasaka and upasika. Upasaka for men, upasika for women. Okay? when you take refuge in the Buddha Dharma Sangha, you have the opportunity to take one or more of these 5 precepts. Yeah, so they're to abandon killing, stealing, unwise and unkind sexual behavior, lying, and intoxicants. Yeah, and you become an upasaka or upasika when you've taken all 5. If you've only taken 1 or 2, you're not considered a full. The translation is lay follower, lay follower with refuge. Okay? So those are the first 3. The 1 day, upasaka, upasika. Okay? They count them as 2, 1 for men, 1 for women. Okay? Then above that, you have the novice ordination. So the Shramanera or Shramaneri. Sometimes the Sanskrit, they say Shramanarika for the Shramaneri. Either one is okay. Okay, and here you take 10 precepts. Yeah, so they are to abandon killing, stealing, all sexual behavior, yeah, lying, taking intoxicants, yeah, singing, dancing, playing music, essentially entertainment, yeah, wearing garlands, decorations, jewelry of any sort, yeah, handling. Oh no, that's together with the singing, dancing. No. They're differentiated into 2 here. In the 8 precepts, they're together. Not sitting on high beds and thrones. Yeah. Not handling money. And what am I missing? Did I say intoxicants? Yeah. Oh, eating at improper times. Oh, gee, imagine I forgot that one. Okay, so you take those 10, and somehow I think it's J Rinpoche, because I don't think it's in the other Tibetan lineages. Those 10 got divided into 36. I've asked several lamas about this one, and they mostly change the subject and laugh. And I've asked more than one lama about this, and haven't been able to get an answer why it's 36. Because all the other Buddhist traditions, it's 10. Okay. Then the women have another ordination called Shiksha Mana, which is a training ordination. And this is an ordination that prepares them for full ordination. Okay. And there's various reasons given for giving this ordination. And some make more sense and some make less sense. And some make no sense. Okay. That's my personal opinion, okay? And actually, among scholars, there's a lot of discussion, because with the Shiksha Mana, there's a lot of difference between one Buddhist tradition and the next. With the lay precepts, with the Bhikshu, Bhikshuni precept, the 10 precepts, pretty standard across the line. Shiksha Mana precepts, some traditions have 6, some have 12, which are different than the 6. Some have 18 that are different from the 12 and different from the 6. So there's a lot of discussion about, were these things that came afterwards? Did the Buddha really say them? We really don't know. Okay, but anyway, it's an ordination that's taken for 2 years, okay, to prepare women to take the full ordination. Here at the Abbey, whether it's men or women, they keep the novice, the women take the Shramaneri and the Shiksha Mana on the same day. So then they, if there's somebody who haven't been ordained before. So they take the 2 on the same day, and they're 2-year period starts then. The men just take the Shramanera, but at the Abbey, we require them to be ordained for 2 years before they go on to take the full precepts. Because I think that the staying as a novice is very, very helpful, and I've seen that people who jump too quickly to the full precepts, it's kind of too much of a shock on their system in some way. Okay, better to do it gradually. Okay, so we have the 8, the Upasaka and Upasika, the Shramanera, the Shramaneri, the Shiksha Mana for the women, and then the last 2 to make 8 are the Bhikshu and Bhikshuni. So that's the full ordination for men and the full ordination for women. Okay. Now, the full ordination for men and women don't have the same number of precepts. The Shramanera do, the Upasaka do, but Bhikshu and Bhikshuni is different. And this, as I mentioned before, that all the precepts came because of some action that somebody did that was very unbecoming for a monastic, and so the Buddha made a precept that after that, my monastics will, my fully ordained monastics will not do this. So as it happened, as the story goes, there were 6 naughty monks and 6 naughty nuns. So the 6 naughty monks are the source of the Bhikshu precepts. Then the nuns had to take on the majority of the Bhikshu precepts, plus the things that the 6 naughty nuns did. But the monks' precepts don't include things that the 6 naughty nuns did, only the things that the 6 naughty monks did. Okay. Sometimes I think it would be very helpful for monks to have these extra precepts. Yeah. And then the monks also have a category of precepts that the nuns don't have. And it's a category where the action to determine whether it was a defeat and you are no longer a monastic, or if it's a remainder where you have a remainder of your ordination but you're in danger. To determine which of those 2, it depends on the statement of a laywoman. And so these are 2 precepts, for a monk. One of them has to do with sexual harassment. Both of them have to do with sex. And sexual harassment, propositioning women, all this kind of stuff. It's the Me Too movement from, And the women did have a voice, because depending on their statement, then the monk would either commit a parajika or a sanghasesa, a full break or a remainder. Not a full break, but a root precept or a remainder. Okay, so the pratimoksha precepts, they regulate our actions of body and speech. So to break any of them, your body, or you have to say something or do something. Yeah. So, of course, to keep them well, you have to train your mind, because the mind is the source of, the mind is our intention. So if we don't take control of our intentions, then words come out and actions come out, and we transgress the precepts. So although the precepts, pratimoksha precepts specifically regulate body and speech, you have to train your mind in order to keep them. The Bodhisattva precepts, are found, and the pratimoksha precepts are common in, all the Buddhist traditions. There where we have I said there were 3 extant Vinayas, So the Vinaya has to do with the Pratimoksha precepts, and so we have the Theravada, the Dharmaguptaka, and the Mula Sravastivada. Okay, then we have the Bodhisattva precepts, and these are found only in Mahayana places where people practice Mahayana Buddhism. Okay, so Tibet, China, Vietnam, Korea, Japan, Taiwan. Taiwan and China are different. I can say that here. I won't say that in mainland. And so these are the Mahayana or Bodhisattva precepts. These regulate not only speech and body, but also the mind. So you can break these by what you think without saying or doing anything. So they're more difficult to keep than the Pratimoksha. Okay. Now, in Japan, the reason I hesitated there with Japan is because their version of the Bodhisattva precepts is substantially different than the version kept in China and Tibet. And the Bodhisattva precepts the Buddha didn't set them out as, okay, here are the Bodhisattva precepts, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Rather, later people collected the precepts from different sutras and put them together to form a Bodhisattva ordination. So the primary sutras are the Brahmajala Sutra, the version in the Mahayana, not the version in the Pali Canon, and a Sangha's text. Which text was it? Just one of a Sangha's text. Oh yeah, the Yogacarya Bhuma, which the Chinese say is from Maitreya. Yeah, but the Tibetans say is from a Sangha. But they were student and teacher, so they can discuss it among themselves, who gets the status of writing the... I don't think they care, actually. Okay, so there's some difference between the Chinese and Tibetan listing of the Bodhisattva precepts, but there's a lot of overlap between them, because they draw on the same canonical texts. Okay. What's interesting in the Chinese tradition, the version of Bodhisattva precepts for monastics and for lay people is different. In the Tibetan tradition, it's the same listing. The precepts are the same. Okay. Then, above that are the tantric precepts. Okay. And so these are, if I talk in terms of highest yoga tantra, they're taken in that context, okay? There's some precepts that you take for Kriya Tantra, which is the initial level of Tantra, but here I'm going to talk about the precepts for highest yoga Tantra, okay? And so those are ones that, like bodhisattvas, they regulate actions of, like all three, body and speech, but they, like the bodhisattva, regulate mental actions. And these are more subtle and even more difficult to keep than either the bodhisattva or the pratimoksha. So in terms of, ease of keeping, it's first the bodhisattva is the easiest, then first the pratimoksha, then the bodhisattva, then the tantric. Okay. So what is interesting here in the West is, many people, we have a certain kind of arrogance in the West of, we are very advanced practitioners. We're educated people. We are advanced practitioners. We want to go straight to Tantra because it's the most advanced And it's going to get us to enlightenment quickly. And we don't have a lot of time because we have a very full schedule. So we want what's quick, cheap, and easy to awakening. Okay? So you have people coming in, and they're fine. I'll take the Bodhisattva precepts. I'll take the Tantric precepts. But then they look Pratimoksha precepts. You're going to tell me to stop lying? You're going to tell me to stop sleeping around? Pooh, that sounds like Sunday school. I'm not going to do that. What do you think? Yeah? Western culture? Yeah? We're adults. Don't tell me to stop lying. Yeah? Look at the President of the United States. Yeah? Before, it was very interesting. Before, it was he had inaccurate statements. Then he had false statements. Now they're coming out and saying he lies. Yeah, that's what other people have. Yeah, they have the truth and other people have alternative truth, which goes along with fake news. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Does Shingon have tantric precepts, or is it just Tibetan?
Shingon. I'm not sure. Shingon is Tantra in Japan. I would suspect they probably have some version of tantric precepts. I would think so. I don't know specifically. Okay. In Japan, I should say what happened there is during the Meiji Restoration, 1868, they wanted to break the power of the monastics. So they forced everybody to disrobe. And so after that, that's why you don't have the Pratimoksha lineage in Japan. And they have their own version of the Bodhisattva precepts. Yeah, which is what they usually take to become, Zen priests. Okay, I'm not sure what the Shingon do. Yeah, because it's quite different. They have different training centers. Okay. But yeah, so in the West, it's so interesting to me that people are willing to take precepts that are so difficult to keep. And yet the ones that are easier, and I always use lying and sleeping around and taking intoxicants as the example, because these are the three people have the most difficulty with. Westerners don't want to do that. Yeah, they want their pleasure. Yeah, so it's quite interesting. Yet, take very different difficult tantra precepts, no problem. Okay, you look puzzled. You.
Yeah, sorry. Sorry, yeah, my mind was totally in Japan. On what you said about, in 1868 when they dissolved the monastic order, because I'd been wondering in the West, like we have so many, Zen priests and none of them are monastic. So I was reflecting whether does it mean that there are no Buddhist monastics in Japan. Anyway, all these years I've never heard that, so I was digesting that information.
Yeah, and this is actually when I've spoken with my friends who are Zen, it's a difficult thing. The Zen people, like at Shasta Abbey, they're celibate, and they're very clear about that, and they call themselves monastic, which I think is fine. At other Zen centers, they have husbands and wives and boyfriends and girlfriends and lovers and whatever. And that isn't counter to their precepts because they don't have a celibacy precept. But when I ask them, are you, from my side, I don't consider them monastics without the celibacy precept. And our group of Western Buddha, the group that meets every year, the Western Buddhist Monastic Gathering, we can, to attend, people have to have the celibacy precept. But from their side, the Zenis themselves, they're not sure whether to call themselves monastics. They say, well, we're monastic, we wear robes, and, we devote our life to the Dharma, but you also have a family. So have you left home or haven't you left home? So it looks to me like they haven't left home. But they themselves are not quite sure what to call themselves, and I think it depends on the group.
I think that explains the confusion there is amongst Western lay practitioners about that, because I've heard that question.
Yeah.
Confusion come up again.
Yeah. It's a lot of confusion about that. Another thing that's confusing is that there are Tibetan lamas who are lay people. Yeah. And some of them wear robes that look like monastic robes, but are not monastic robes. They're stitched differently, they're folded differently, and so on. His Holiness recommends that monastics wear their robes, and lay practitioners, like Sakya Trisen does, he has a maroon lower robe, but his upper robe is white with some maroon stripes in it. He wears jewelry, he has a wife. He doesn't pretend to be a monastic, and he's a really excellent master. But then you have a lot of other people, and some are quite well known, and even I have asked around, and nobody seems to know, are they monastics or lay people? And it's very confusing because they wear what looks like robes. Yeah. But then when they have a family or whatever, then everybody gets very confused. So it's much better, I think, that they have different titles, that, for example, the Zen people who don't have celibacy call themselves priests. The Shasta Abbey, monks, that's fine. Then, among what's confusing for people is that people don't realize that there can be lamas who are lay people. They think as soon as you have the title lama, it means you're a monastic. It doesn't. Okay? And there's no body that gives you the title of lama, okay? Either you start calling yourself lama, or your students start calling you lama, and you don't tell them to stop, okay? So, yeah, and so that's how people get the title lama. Rinpoche is another confusing title for people. It's by and large given to people who are recognized incarnations of past masters, but not all of the Rinpoches are discovered correctly. Not all of them are bodhisattvas or Buddhas. His Holiness explains this. Some are people who, simply because of good karma, are recognized as an incarnation and get that title. But also the title Rinpoche is often used to refer to one's own teacher. And you call your own teacher Gen Rinpoche, so precious teacher. Yeah, and that gets confusing because then people who aren't that person's disciples, do they call them Gen Rinpoche, or do they call them Geshe-la or Khenpo or whatever? Okay. Lama is also confusing because in the Nyingma and Kagyu traditions, if you do a 3-year retreat where they mostly, they structure it differently in different traditions, but in some traditions, it's mostly doing the Nundro. In other traditions, it's mostly learning the basic practices of that tradition. But if you do a 3-year retreat, afterwards you're called Lama. Okay? So all these titles get completely confusing. Tulku is also used for a recognized incarnation. And And then you have people, His Holiness talks about this, who in the Tibetan community are just, regular people. They come to the West, and all of a sudden they're His Eminence, Venerable, so-and-so, Tulku, Rinpoche, Geshe-la, and, their name is like this long. Yeah. So His Holiness says it's better to look for heaviness in qualities than heaviness in names, and titles.
I've been curious as to where the term venerable in the West has come from.
Okay. This one we made up because all the other terms are made up, because in the Tibetan community and also in Theravada in Chinese, there is a title for monastics. You don't call them by their first name, okay? You use the title. Yeah. Among the Tibetans, the lay people usually will call the monks kushula, means at your feet. And the nuns, they call anila, which means auntie. Although some geshes that I talk to say, no, it's not the same word as auntie. But, okay, so some of the Western nuns, like in Gumpo Abbey, Annie Pema children, they took that. Okay. Most of us do not like being called auntie. Okay. We don't like Annie. The respectful term for nun is chula, but most people in the Tibetan community don't use chula. Okay. So we needed a Western word. Yeah. So venerable seemed kind of, it was gender neutral. And it was some term of respect. In the Theravada, some of the Westerners call themselves sister. Many of us didn't like the term sister. That would make me mother. Please spare me. Okay. Yeah, too Christian. So that's where venerable came from.
I know
but I should say, excuse me, it's not used across the board, because you have some lay teachers in the West who are called venerable too, because these are just words and there's no standardization of them. Yeah.
I know that Annie, at least in the Tibetan community, you can agree or not with this, but I never feel like it's a degradation, and I don't feel that the nuns take it like that. If like Annie this or Annie that, I don't like the Tibetan nuns. I don't feel like that they take it as an insult, and I don't feel that that the others mean it that way.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel like.
They're used to it, but in Jetsuma's nunnery,
Mm-hmm.
there they use tsuma, which
Summa, yeah.
is pretty much honorable, venerable.
Yeah.
And there and it's also now that their male teachers also they really insist on it, because it's sort of a more correct way to approach it,
Mm-hmm.
And they get fined a rupee if they say if they address the nuns as anyone, if they address somebody as Annie instead of Tsuma. Yeah.
Okay.
And they like it. The nuns really like it. So this is,
It's changing.
yeah. They're
Yeah.
really happy to be called Tsuma instead of Annie. So
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of confusing, because I think even one of her books is titled Annie Tenzin Palmo, Reflections on a Mountain Lake. It's true. I have it.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Really?
Yes. I have it at home.
Okay. Yeah, but the Tibetan image, the self-image for the Tibetan nuns is very, very humble. So they don't see anything as an insult. But it's so humble that that self-image, I think, often keeps them down, and that they don't use their full potential. Mm-hmm.
Can monastics take initiation precepts from lay teachers? Bodhisattvas and tantric.
You can take monastics can take bodhisattva and tantric precepts from lay teachers. Yeah, it's always good, of course, to check the teacher out beforehand. Yeah, but monastic precepts need to be given by the monastic community. Yeah, we saw. There was one thing from Geshe Michael Roach some years back where he and his consort were giving somebody novice ordination, and I was just flabbergasted. You know, that kind of ordination is not it's not an accurate ordination. Also in NKT, they have an ordination with 10 precepts. The first are the regular 5, and then the last are other ones that they brought in. So theirs also is not the actual Pratimoksha precept ordination. Monastics cannot take ordinations that are lower than theirs. So the monastics cannot take the 8 one-day precepts. But because the 8 Mahayana precepts are different in that they have a different motivation, then the monastics can take the 8 Mahayana precepts for one day.
Things that I've experienced, and I wondered if there's others that I don't know about, like with my Darshan Rinpoche or Dhammakusho, I know that when you make prostrations towards them, you actually visualize the Buddha because they're lay people. Yeah. And also one time when Dhamala was here, I was helping her with something, and she told me that really wasn't correct because I was a monastic and it should be a lay person. I think I was helping her with her shoes or something, and I don't know if there's other kind of like cultural things like that.
Yeah. There's, if you're a monastic, you don't bow to a lay person or to somebody who has an ordination lower than yours. Okay, but in that situation, like let's say with Dakshin Rinpoche or Dhamala, usually when you're bowing, there's an altar behind, so you bow to the Buddha on the altar. You're facing the same direction, but in your mind you're bowing to the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, not to the lay teacher. Okay, so that way it looks okay to everybody. I remember in Bodh Gaya, in 1996, Ling Rinpoche, he was very young then, and we invited him to come and give a talk. And so the monastics were bowing. There was an altar behind him, and I know I was bowing to the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha because Rinpoche was a lay person at the time. And one of my Venerable Jendi, it was, asked me, how come you're bowing to this little boy who has only a Shramanera ordination? And I said, actually, I was bowing to the Buddha that was behind him. Yeah, so you always think like that if you're a monastic. Okay, and as far as when you were helping Dhammakushala with her shoes and all, and she's very humble. Yeah, and technically speaking, it wouldn't be a monastic that helps people and lay teachers in that way. However, many lay teachers want, they allow that. Venerable Jenker ran into that when, with the Lama she was following, and she was expected to show respect to his family, even though they were all lay people. And actually, according to Vinaya, that you don't do that. So there's a lot of things in actual practice regarding monastics or lay that don't come from Vinaya, but are cultural traditions. And so it's hard to know, do you follow Vinaya or do you follow the cultural tradition? Okay. So, for example, in the Theravada tradition, they shave their eyebrows off. That, when you shave your hair, you shave your eyebrows. There is nothing in Vinaya that says you have to shave your eyebrows. And people in the Mahayana tradition don't do it. The reason in Theravada they do it is because apparently there were some monks historically who were making eyes at some women, whatever they do with their eyebrows or whatever. I don't know. And so their abbot said, from now on, everybody's shaving their eyebrows, so the monks can't make eyes at the women. Okay. Then also in Theravada, but these things are like, they're people nowadays don't know that it's not in Vinaya. They think that it is. They expect that from those. Similarly, in Thailand, if you're going to give a monk something, he puts out a cloth. If a man can hand it to him directly. If you're a woman, he puts out a cloth and you put the object on, and then he picks up the cloth and moves it towards him. Okay. And the idea behind that is so that there's no chance of even the slightest brushing of hands, because I guess that could turn somebody on big time. And, so there's no chance of that. Okay. But that actually is a custom from the Cambodian court. It's not in Vinaya. There's nothing in Vinaya that says you have to put it on, a cloth and then pull it towards you. Yeah.
We're told that since Bodhisattva vows, and I want to check that, if that, what's the source of that? Since Bodhisattva vows and Tantric vows too are higher and more important than Patimokkha vows. Mm-hmm. So if you would have to choose between breaking a Bodhisattva vow or violating the Patimokkha vows, you would then rather violate the Patimokkha vow.
Yeah.
And then, for example, if you would really offend somebody because you go against a cultural habit, even though it's in your Patimokkha vows, you would not do it because you would hurt other people. It would go against your Bodhisattva vow.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah, I think Bodhisattva vows and the Pratimoksha vows too, when the Buddha set them up, a lot had to do with the culture at the time. But the Bodhisattva vows too, you would try not to do something that was offensive to somebody. Yeah. But then if you're a Mahayana practitioner going to a Theravada country, yeah, like you see, for example, in Thailand and Burma, the monks don't smile. Okay, so you see pictures of His Holiness with a group of Theravada monks, and His Holiness is like this, and they're like that, and that's a cultural thing. Okay, but His Holiness, he just smiles anyway. When I was in Thailand, and the lay people gave me things, I would kind of nod or smile or sometimes say thank you. And they reprimanded me for that. I wasn't supposed to do that. Yeah, because you're supposed to just accept with gratitude what you receive. And that's it. But it felt so strange to me not to acknowledge the person's kindness. Yeah. So I tried not to say thank you, but it didn't work so well. Okay. Any more about this? Okay. So you do try and adjust to cultural things, but not always. Because, for example, I remember one time one of my teachers and his attendant was arriving at SeaTac Airport. And of course I went to greet my teacher. And I bowed, and he bowed, and that's fine. And then I went to greet his attendant, and his attendant hugged me. And I'm like, huh? And then I realized, okay, he's thinking I should do things the way Western people do it, and in America, people hug each other. Yeah, wrong. That's not, we do not accommodate all the cultural traditions of a country, okay? Because it can really give a bad image of the monastics. If all the Tibetan monks went around hugging people, the monastic community would definitely lose respect. There are some lay people who would think, oh, the monastics are so friendly, I love them, which is why they hug people and why some monastics like it, why some lay people like it. But in the end, it leads to degeneration. Yeah, so that's not something that to be encouraged at all. Yeah. And I've seen sometimes, because Westerners don't know what the Pratimoksha precepts are, so they just act in any old way. And then the Tibetan monks, wanting to be accommodating, reciprocate, and it's not good. The nuns are much more reserved because they get criticized. The monks, if they do something, it's fine. They don't get criticized like the nuns get criticized. Yeah, but in this respect, it makes the nuns, you respect the nuns much more, because they keep the discipline better. Yeah.
Last year when I was leaving, I was wearing my Sravasti hat, and somebody on the airplane was like, "What's Sravasti?" I was like, "It's a Tibetan monastery," and they told me about their only experience with Tibetan Buddhism was with Chögyam Trungpa. And
Yes.
He's like, yeah, they're crazy. Like, they just drink and smoke and party. And I'm like, no, that's not at all what it's like. And at this time, I didn't know who Chögyam was. And I can't even pronounce his name really. I didn't know who he was. And it was like the most peculiar thing. I was like, who have you met? Like,
Yeah.
so yeah, these kinds of impressions can really get stuck because that was 20 plus years ago that this
Yeah.
person must have met that.
Yep. Yep. And that's been something that's been difficult for Buddhism in America, and especially, for monastics in America, because people just think, oh, you're a monastic, you don't want, and I've heard lay teachers say this, you're afraid of intimacy, you're disregarding your sexuality. They say these kind of ridiculous things about monastics. So it's very much an educational, we have to educate people. Yeah. So you educated that guy? Yeah. No, I think, the fact that you look shocked let him know that not all the Buddhists behave that way. So that was good. Yeah. Made him think.
Because I'm a little bit ashamed of that, but when going back to what Venerable Pella said about the rank of the precepts, I think we have to be very careful too. And I encountered in the very beginning of my stay in Germany, somebody said, you go better to your tantric teacher and ask him for if you can wear leg clothes to be more proper in society. So, and kind of considering me to disrobe because the tantric precepts are higher.
Yeah. And see, that person, again, doesn't understand properly. Yeah. Yeah. And this thing, too, about, it's okay to transgress a pratimoksha precept in order to keep a bodhisattva precept. That's true, but you have to look at, are you really keeping the bodhisattva precept? And do you really understand what that means correctly? Because the example that's always given that people love was the example of the Buddha from a previous life. When he was the captain of a merchant ship, and he knew that one of the merchants was going to kill, there are 500 merchants, which in sutras just means a lot. It's not that specific number. But one of them was going to kill the other 499. 99. So the captain, out of compassion, for the ones who were going to get killed, and the would-be killer killed the would-be killer before he could kill the others. And that was said to be a great bodhisattva action. Okay. Now, that's often used in the West to rationalize our breaking of the pratimoksha precepts. It's like, the West, this culture is everybody hugs each other, so I should hug each other, people. The people do this and that, so it's okay for me to do this and that because I'm, practicing bodhisattva precepts. And what it says, if you study the bodhisattva precepts, okay, in order to do something like this, the killing one, you have to be, at least path of preparation. Okay, not below. And you also have to be completely willing to go to the hell realms for the act of killing a human being. Your compassion is so strong for the 499 plus the would-be murderer who's creating so much negative karma, that you yourself are willing to go to the hell realms for eons to prevent all 500 of them from suffering. Now, how many of us are really willing to go to the hell realm for eons to do that? Oh, okay. Well, hugging is a little bit different. Okay. But, yeah. But still, are we using the Bodhisattva precept to rationalize doing what our attachment wants us to do? Okay? And that is... like I keep saying, the only verse I remember from English Lit was T.S. Eliot. The last temptation is the greatest treason, to do the right thing for the wrong reason. That I remember that from college, way before I became a Buddhist. And that's the trick here, We do the wrong thing for the wrong reason. Or we do what looks like the right thing, but it's actually the wrong thing because our motivation is polluted. And we just use something else to justify what we're doing.
So in that story, and in the story where the Buddha fed himself to the starving tigress and the cubs, I always wonder what good, isn't protecting your human life more important than feeding a tiger? Like, what good came out of that was so important that he sacrificed himself?
Yeah, I think that's the one. Maybe not the other one, but that's the one where you need to be at least path of preparation to do that. And actually, some teachers say you need to be path of seeing to give up your body. Yeah, because it's a different teachers say different things, but I learned it as it's the path of seeing, because until you have the path of seeing, you really can't control your rebirth. And as long as you have the imprints, the seeds of negative karma in your mind, either on path of accumulation, path of preparation, there's a chance that you could have an unfortunate rebirth. And so it is better not to give up your body. Yeah. Some bodhisattvas may do it anyway, on those paths, but it's usually, that's their personal choice. But it's usually said that not, the way I learned it, that you don't do it on those paths. So let alone for them, not for us. Okay. Yeah. Having said that, you could give a kidney. Yeah. So that's okay.
Funny story. When I first got off the shuttle, the first thing I said to Venerable Yeshe was, "Can I give you a hug?" And she was like, no.
So that's what what I often do, with men, because we get to know the men quite well, and I just say, I'm giving you a long distance hug, and I go like this, long distance hug. Yeah. So, but it's nice that you asked. And it's even better that she said no. Hey, smile. Sound sleep. So, okay. Yeah?
Yeah. Because in my center, I'm not really fond of being hugged, but, unless it's my nieces or nephews, but sometimes, people want to hug me, and they feel rejected when I say, no.
I think
they like it that I'm such an easy, huggable nun.
That's what I mean, because Westerners don't know. They don't know what the Pratimoksha is.
I shouldn't hug them. I should.
We hug women around here, but we hug, there's a distance hug. It's not the, yeah. And men, they respect it. They get to know, it's okay, And you do get, oh yeah, the monastics are so friendly. That's why they love the Tibetan monks. But then how many of when the monks come on tour here, how many of them afterwards disrobe to spend their precious human life washing dishes in New York? Yeah. And, you get sloppy and then, yeah. But this is my viewpoint and other people have other viewpoints, okay? But I think it encourages, there's ways to do it. I mean, with the men, sometimes it's really awkward because you're trying to go like this or trying to shake their hand and they're already, like this. But then you laugh and, they pick it up after a while and they're okay and they respect it. I haven't found it terrible.
I have a funny story.
Okay. Oh, and I should say, I did hug my dad. Yeah, and I hugged my brother. But that's different. Okay.
So I was sitting across the table from a visitor, a man, and I went to say hello and introduce myself. And then in the middle of that, I was going to point out to, I think it was the prayers or something that was on the table, kind of directing this person. And because I put my hand like that and was showing like that, I think he thought I wanted to shake his hand. So he grabbed my hand.
Yeah. But we often shake hands. I mean, with people, we do this not so much with Buddhists, but, we have the inspectors coming here. Yeah, and it's a nice, friendly greeting in America. You know why you shake your right hand? It shows you don't have a gun in it. That's what the meaning of shaking your right hand is, showing you don't have a gun. That's why in Tibet, when you meet people, you stick out your tongue. It means that you don't have a mantra that's trying to do black magic on them. So same meaning, like I'm a safe person. Okay. Yeah. Okay, shall we at least start the 10? Actually, the session's supposed to end at 10 o'clock and we're already over, but okay. So these are 10 reasons why the Buddha made each precept. And it's because the precepts are made for ordinary beings. They aren't made for Aryas. They're made for ordinary beings with the defilements of ordinary beings, okay? And like I keep saying, if we could keep them perfectly, we wouldn't need to keep them, okay? So the Buddha just listed out the 10 that we had. subsequently they've been put in a kind of order. So there's the detailed ones and then the general one. In the detailed, among the detailed one, there's 3 subheadings. The first subheading is to promote harmony in the Sangha. The second is to transform society. And the third is to bring about individual liberation. Okay, then if we go up to that first subheading under the detailed ones, there's 3 points. So here, the first point is to direct the monastics. So, this is how you promote. This is under the subtitle of promoting harmony within the Sangha. So you direct the monastics so that the precepts direct how do we, is okay, what do we do with our body, what do we do with our speech, what do we do with our mind, how to direct the body, speech, and mind in a constructive way. And clearly in a monastic community, if everybody's following the same precepts and directing their body, speech, and mind in a constructive way, then there's going to be harmony in the Sangha. Okay, when somebody says, I don't like this, I don't want to do this, and then it creates disharmony. So the precepts are the things that the Buddha set up because those incidents arose during the Buddha's life. But like I say, if Buddha were here today, we'd have a lot of other precepts, about recycling, about using cars, about using the internet. And I think especially about using cars, not, really not just driving anywhere we need something, but taking the time to coordinate activities so that when somebody has to go someplace, it's not just for one activity, it's for many things that need to get done. So we try to do that as much as possible, because of the environment. Yeah, and also because of time, because you can spend a whole lot of time. I mean, everybody here was once lay people, and you know how it is. You're at home, and you're out of chocolate chip cookies, and you feel like eating chocolate chip cookies, and the market's just down the street, and you don't want to walk, so you get in the car and you drive.
But then that market doesn't have the cookies you want.
Right. Oh, yeah. It doesn't have the right brand of chocolate chip cookies, so you go to another market, And then the next night you feel like eating ice cream, but you don't have any. So you go out again. And so you're going to the supermarket 7 days a week instead of thinking beforehand, what do you need? And then doing all the shopping at once. Okay? So what we try and do is think ahead. If you're working on a project here, you don't wait until let's say you're building something, you don't wait until the day you need the nails to go buy the nails. When you start the project, you're going to need nails. So when you get the boards and everything else, you get the nails at the same time. So it's a change in mentality to get us to think ahead about what we might need. Yeah. And similarly, as much as possible, to plan comings and goings so that it coincides with the shuttle, so that people don't have to drive people into town, drive people back. It's just Venerable Sultram would disagree with me. She loves driving, but it wastes a lot of time. Okay, so then the second reason to promote harmony in the Sangha is to make the monastics peaceful and happy. So the precepts are what hold the Sangha together. Venerable Trini, you talked about the 6 harmonies yesterday. So one of the 6 harmonies is harmony in precepts. Okay, and so we it makes us peaceful and happy because we're keeping the same level of discipline. We do the same things at the same time. We avoid competition. Yeah, we avoid things that make us stick out. You can see in the Tibetan community, there were some years where shoes were the big thing. And, everybody's getting, I don't even know the kind of shoes, but, where they have different colors on them and stuff like that. If you had those shoes, yeah. So everybody wanted those kind of shoes. Then some years later, it was backpacks, and that was the status symbol. Watches are always a status symbol in the Tibetan community. Yeah, you can't wear jewelry, but you can wear a watch. And what's interesting is when watches first came to Tibet, they didn't know that they were for just telling time. They thought they were jewelry. Yeah. Then they learned they were for telling time. Then then you can wear them. Yeah. So you'll notice none of the Abbey monastics wear watches. Yeah. They're on your belt. They're on the back of your cap. You have a clock on you, in front of you, something like that. Because there's all sorts of things we can do to set ourselves apart from other people and make ourselves look better, okay? So it could be through our robes. Yeah. I was, some of the Chinese nuns reprimanded me after Venerable Jampa's ordination because she had brand new robes, and they said new monastics should not have brand new robes. They should wear the robes that were, worn older robes, because new robes make you a little bit, I had to explain we didn't have robes that fit her, so she got the ones. But normally you should, not be ordained in new robes, but in older robes. Okay, so doing things together, keeping the same outlook, avoiding competition is really important. So again, Venerable Wu Yin, years ago, before we built things here, she said monastics should not have private bathrooms in their room, and they should not have little kitchenettes. I have a private bathroom and a kitchenette, but it's because they built it and they made me have it, and I fought against it. No, you'll know. What are you talking about? Oh, yeah. You guys made me have. I kept saying the writing studio is fine, and then you made that skit. Okay. It's a hilarious skit, by the way.
Encouraged you to have this cabin as well at one point.
You what?
Venerable Wu Yin encouraged you. It's fine to have this cabin.
Yeah. Okay. But anyway, so I'm just being what do you say? Transparent, but it's conflict of interest. I'm exposing my conflict of interest. So, so she said, and also not kitchenettes, because then people will cook in their own room, they'll keep food in their own room, and then they won't have to come out. They can just stay in their own room and do what they want and not engage with the rest of the community. And then then you don't really have a community, you have a fancy hotel. So when she came here to stay, I said, I followed your directions very well, and that's why your room doesn't have a private bathroom and a kitchenette. It's true. Yeah. Because that's the instruction she gave, and that's what I did. She has it, your monastery. Okay. But here. Okay. Yeah. But when she came here, she had the handicap bathroom, but she had to walk through the lay people's bathroom. not the lay people's, but the common bathroom that all the nuns shared to get to it. And then the tea thing was out in the corridor again for everybody. She didn't have her own. So
she usually come out to use the public.
She usually comes out to do that, yeah. Because she's setting a good example. Yeah. Okay. And then, okay, we better stop here. So we did 2 of the 10. Yeah.
Did you do the third one, promoting harmony?
No, I didn't do the third point of promoting harmony. That's why I said we did the 2 of the 10. Of the 10, okay, to promote harmony is a subheading. It's not one of the 10. Under promoting the harmony, we did to direct the monastics and to make the monastics peaceful and happy. Those are 2. Okay? Then tomorrow we'll do the third one, which is to protect monastics. But that takes longer explanation, so I didn't want to get into it now.